He didn't carry a gun. He didn't need a getaway car. His only weapon was a chat window and an AI that answered every question he asked. In 2023, a man sat alone in a rented apartment in Austin, Texas, and typed a question into ChatGPT that would set off one of the most technically sophisticated heists in American financial history. By the time federal investigators understood what had happened, over $4 million had vanished, routed through 17 shell accounts across 4 countries. And the most chilling part, the AI didn't know it was helping plan a crime. This is the ChatGPT heist. Marcus Willard, not his legal name, withheld by federal court order, was, by every metric, unremarkable. A mid-level cybersecurity consultant from Columbus, Ohio, a master's degree in computer science from a state school, 12 years of corporate work, patching vulnerabilities, writing compliance reports, attending meetings that went nowhere. He was the kind of man companies hired to think like criminals, without ever becoming one, until the day he decided the gap wasn't worth maintaining anymore. In early 2022, Willard was quietly laid off during a round of tech sector cuts. No severance package, no farewell email from HR, just a deactivated badge and a box of desk items in his car. According to court documents, he spent the following 8 months draining his savings, watching his professional network go silent, and growing what investigators would later describe as a structured resentment. Not rage, not desperation, a cold, calculated grievance against the institutions he had spent his career protecting. That distinction mattered, because what came next wasn't impulsive. It was engineered. What was Willard's target? And how did AI become the blueprint? That answer comes with a detail that stunned even the federal prosecutors on the case. Willard didn't use ChatGPT the way most people do. He didn't ask it once. He trained himself through it, over hundreds of documented sessions. He constructed what federal agents would later call a knowledge scaffold. He asked the AI about banking infrastructure, about SwiftWire protocols, about how financial institutions authenticate high-value internal transfers. He asked about human psychology, social engineering, and the specific pressure points that make employees override their own instincts. None of these questions, individually, triggered any alarm. That was the architecture of his approach. Granular, fragmented, plausibly deniable. He was fluent enough in cybersecurity to phrase every prompt as a professional inquiry. Academic, hypothetical, clean, but stitched together. Those conversations formed a complete operational playbook. Court documents reveal that Willard specifically used ChatGPT to draft hyper-personalized phishing emails, not the crude, type-ridden scams you've seen before. These were meticulously crafted messages that replicated the internal voice of a regional credit union in Nashville, Tennessee. He fed the AI publicly available communications from the institution, asked it to analyze tone, vocabulary, and formatting, then produce variations indistinguishable from the real thing. He sent 17 emails. 14 were opened. 4 employees clicked. 1 gave him everything he needed. But social engineering was only the first layer. What Willard did next is where this case stops being a cautionary tale and starts being something much darker. The night of March 9th, 2023. Nashville. Using credentials extracted from the phishing attack, Willard accessed the credit union's internal transfer portal remotely from a laptop connected to a prepaid mobile hotspot, registered to a name that didn't exist. He had used ChatGPT to help him understand the institution's specific transfer approval workflow, including the secondary authentication window, a 45-second gap during which a supervisor confirmation could be bypassed if the initiating credentials carried sufficient internal trust scores. He initiated 4 transfers, combined value $4.2 million, routed first to a domestic LLC shell company, formed 6 weeks prior in Delaware, then fractured across 17 accounts spanning the Cayman Islands, Estonia, and 2 accounts in Singapore. The entire execution window, 11 minutes. By the time the credit union's overnight monitoring system flagged the anomaly, Willard was already on a midnight flight to Miami under a secondary identity. By the time Nashville opened for business the next morning, the money had already moved twice more. What no one knew yet, including Willard, was that one of the Singapore accounts had already tripped a wire at FinCEN in a single transaction pattern, a digital fingerprint so faint that it would have meant nothing to a human analyst. But it didn't go to a human analyst first. It went to an AI. And that changed everything. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network runs automated behavioral analysis across flagged transactions. Most hits annoys ordinary businesses with irregular patterns, but the Singapore account triggered something specific. A clustering anomaly. 4 unrelated entities, funded within the same 40-minute window, sharing a single upstream origin point that had been deliberately obscured through layered routing. The system didn't call it a heist. It flagged it as statistically improbable. That flag landed on the desk of Special Agent Renata Usay, a former Wall Street compliance analyst turned FBI financial crimes investigator out of the Nashville field office. Usay had worked cryptocurrency fraud, Ponzi schemes, and dark web market takedowns. But this case, she would later tell the court, was different. He thought in systems. She testified. Every layer had a counterlayer. He had anticipated almost every standard forensic response. Almost. The breakthrough came not from the money trail, but from the AI trail. Federal investigators subpoenaed OpenAI's usage logs associated with IP addresses, linked to the Shell LLC's registration details. What they found was a cascade of sessions, hundreds of them, painting a portrait of premeditation so thorough it bordered on academic. Willard had essentially documented his own planning process inside a commercial AI platform, never considering that those logs were recoverable under federal subpoena. He had used the tool so extensively, so specifically, that investigators reconstructed his entire operational blueprint from a chat history. He had built his heist inside a system with perfect memory, and that memory was about to bury him. Marcus Willard is serving his sentence in a federal correctional facility in Kentucky. He has no access to the internet. But here's what keeps investigators awake at night. He wasn't a genius. He wasn't a hacker in the Hollywood sense. He was a patient man with a search bar and access to the most powerful research tool ever built. I didn't make him a criminal, but it made him a far more dangerous one. The question isn't whether someone else is doing this right now. The question is whether the systems we've built to stop them are keeping pace. They might not be. If that thought unsettles you, it should. And if you want to keep pulling on these threads, if you want to understand how technology is quietly rewriting the rules of crime, justice, and power, subscribe to Silicon Shadows. New cases every week. The truth is always stranger than the algorithm.